Welcome to the latest conversation on global education, our chance to talk to thought leaders from around the world on what matters most around 21st century learning. And today I'm delighted we're joined by Charlie Leadbeater, a distinguished thinker and writer on many aspects of innovation, and most recently has travelled at Cisco's invitation to literally 100 extraordinary places where learning is happening in ways that we never thought it would. So Charlie, if we can begin, as you look back on this extraordinary range of experiences, is there any one memory that comes to mind that sums it up for you and would allow us to have some insight into the experience that you've had?
Well, I suppose the day that I remember most is a day in a place called the Madangir Resettlement Colony, which is a kind of semi-official slum on the edge of Delhi. It's about 25 minutes outside of Delhi, and I spent it with a gaggle of teenage girls who just finished secondary education, and they were trying to explain to me what it was like trying to become educated in a place like that, which is overrun with people, dusty, hot, disconnected from the centre of town. And the entrance to the slum, which is a narrow pathway, is where boys and girls trot in and out in their uniforms to go to the nearby school. But it's also where Sugata Mitra put his computers in the hole-in-the-wall experiment to allow self-organised learning. And it was the combination of the two, really, and seeing the schools that they went to that should really be, are still a source of hope. And yet, really, what they were saying was that what made them really excited about learning was these computers and the way that it opened up learning as something that could be about fun, discovery, enjoyment, collaborative in the real world. And in a sort of in essence, that little kind of vignette summed up what was going on in a lot of these places. Huge hope for education, absolute hunger for it, incredible appetite to learn in new ways, and traditional systems, if not failing, certainly failing to keep pace with what people needed.
But though your emphasis in the report is, as you've said, on disruptive innovation, often in informal settings, nevertheless, you've found a way to locate that kind of experience in a broader framework. And obviously for 100 settings that you looked at, you need some such broad framework. I think you call it a quadrant. Can you just elucidate on that and set out how that quadrant works in your mind?
Well, I think that when we went around and looked at all the different things that we saw, some in schools, some public schools, some not public schools, lots of projects not in school, outside school, in communities and families, we saw four basic things. We saw efforts to improve schools. So all around the world, people are trying to improve schools, better equipment, better buildings, better books, and crucially and critically, better teachers. The second thing that we saw was people trying to reinvent schools and remake them. So they're recognisably still schools as places of learning, but they were organised in different ways. They had more open spaces, they were more collaborative, they mixed up years, they used computers in imaginative ways, they had more open, personalised curricula, which depended more on exploration. And you see efforts to reinvent schools all over the world, to take the school and kind of bend it and reshape it. The third thing that we saw was people saying, well, actually, the key thing is not just school, it's school, family and community, and it's the relationship between the two. And if you can invest more and more intelligently in families and how they learn and how they prepare children and support children at school, it's the combination of the two, how families supplement school that works. And then finally, what you see are efforts to really transform education, because maybe you can't get schools. Schools don't exist because you don't have resources. You can't employ teachers. Even if you could employ teachers, what they have to teach isn't relevant or useful to the lives of the people who they're trying to help, because you're working in very extreme and poor conditions. Developing ways of teaching and learning which are completely different. And the key difference is that they try and pull people to learning rather than sort of pushing it at them. It's much more about motivation and attraction than it is about compulsion and enforcement of a set curriculum within years and what have you. I think we saw all four of those going on. Improve existing schools, reinvent them, supplement them, and attempt to transform. And of course, in the very best systems in the world, Finland, you probably see all four of those strategies being deployed at the same time. But my story about the developing world is that it's those transformational attempts, finding new, low-cost, more effective ways to reach people at scale, en masse, with learning, which are going to be most relevant. And indeed, they might be quite relevant to many of our challenges in the developing world as well.
Can you just pin down for us what you think the defining features are of what you call disruptive innovation in informal settings? What really characterises what you saw in India, in Caracas, wherever it may be?
Well, I think what you see is people doing without much of the sort of paraphernalia of a school system. They often don't have schools, they piggyback on other buildings. They often don't employ fully qualified teachers. They employ paraprofessionals or peers to lead learning. So learners become teachers in some sort of secular process. Often there's no set curriculum that they start from. They start from problems that people have or skills that they need to learn to deal with a problem or to earn a living or to deal with a health issue. So the whole notion of the curriculum doesn't have as much relevance. It has to come from what people are facing in their lives. They depend heavily on motivation. So either extrinsic motivation, come and learn this because it will do something for you, it will help you earn a living or improve your life in some way, or intrinsic motivation, come and learn this because it's fun. And they often do that by the learning coming through something else. So what you see in these settings are people devising different approaches to learning that you wouldn't see in well-developed settings. And I think if you took some of those approaches, that logic, and then applied them to, the outer suburbs of Paris or to the devastated inner cities of parts of America, or indeed some of our worst pockets of educational inequality in this country, in the UK, you might get different solutions. You might well get better solutions than simply relying on better schools.
What reflections do you have after this experience about the role that technology can and should play in driving forward learning, even in disruptive and informal settings?
I was absolutely convinced. Those girls that I met in that slum in Delhi, they had never touched Wikipedia. They had never Google searched. They weren't on Facebook. They knew nothing about how to use the web for educational resources. It was a completely other world. If you gave them access to that resource, they would just take off, I think. And we have, the big opportunity of all this stuff is what it will mean for those hundreds of millions of young people who are born in or flocking to these cities, full of hope, ambition, wanting to learn about it and connect with the outside world. And if we don't give them that, if we cut that off for economic reasons or other reasons, we will just be missing the biggest opportunity to expand our capacity globally for learning, for enhancing culture, indeed, in a way, for civilization.